Have you ever heard that people sometimes say that things get worse before they actually become better? That's exactly what happened to our good old friend Scrooge. Poor guy. As promised, today we continue with A Christmas Carol Act 2, a play adaptation by Israel Horovitz on the Charles Dickens book. In Act 1, we learned a little bit about Scrooge, about that horrible temper that he has, but we also learned that he's not exactly as horrible as he pretends to be, in a way. And we learned a little bit about his past as well. Act 2 focuses on different things, particularly his present and future, and let me tell you, Scrooge has no idea what's in store for him. Scene 1 and Scene 2 introduce to us the first brand new character, the Ghost of the Christmas Present. Now, the Ghost of the Christmas Past was entirely different. He dressed in white, he was, a fun spirit, he really was a very chill guy, flying very high. Don't read too much into that. But the Ghost of the Christmas Present is an entirely different story. The Ghost of the Christmas Present is extravagant. He likes to wear big, colorful outfits, surrounded by lots of food, instruments, music, the whole thing. The guy likes to put on a show. And even though Scrooge is a little bit scared and reluctant to follow him, as always, he does so anyway. So the Ghost of the Christmas Present takes him to the streets. That's the first thing that he actually shows him. Remember, Scrooge lives in a very, very isolated environment. He lives alone in his mansion, and he only gets out of it to go to his office. So when he goes outside, he gets to see actually how people live. The first scene that the Ghost of the Christmas Present shows him is of two men getting into an argument on the street for whatever reason, but then the ghost sparkles them with what he calls kindness. Again, don't read too much into it. And magically, these men actually make up and they go on their merry way. Scrooge asks him why did he do this, and the ghost says that it is important to spread kindness around. And that is the spirit of Christmas, which Scrooge is still trying to understand. But then in Scene 3, we get to see an entire different scenario. Scene 3 opens in a different place. The Ghost of the Christmas Present has decided to take Scrooge to his employee's house, Bob Cratchit. Now, remember when I told you, Scrooge really has no idea how other people live, let alone his employee. So the ghost has decided that this is a good opportunity for him to see how other people live, especially people that are so close to him. Now, the first scene that we see in the house is when Bob arrives being greeted by all of his children and his wife Martha. Now, the house is not very big, but it accommodates pretty much everyone. And there is one child in particular that is important to the story, Tiny Tim. Tiny Tim has a physical disability that Scrooge had no idea about, so he suddenly feels very bad and guilty about this. As they all gather around for dinner, Bob decides to, have a toast and celebrate Christmas, celebrate his family, but he also decides to celebrate Scrooge. Bob's wife, Martha, is very surprised about this and actually tells Bob, "Why should we toast about him? He is a miser. He is terrible. If he could, he would definitely not be having a toast with us right now." But Bob reminds her that even though he is all these things, he is still his boss and he actually has a deep place in his heart for him. They decide to toast him anyway, and Scrooge feels very, very thankful. And at the same time feels very concerned about Tiny Tim, and asks the Ghost of the Christmas Present if he's going to be spared, which means, is Tiny Tim going to live? To which the ghost replies, "Not for very long." Scrooge, of course, is very conflicted and wants to know why, and wants to see if there's any way in which he can help, because he really doesn't understand how Bob can live like this. All these children in this very poor house with these very limited resources. But the Ghost of the Christmas Present says something very important to him. "I did not show you the Cratchits because they were rich, or I did not show you the Cratchits because they had fancy food or fancy outfits. I show them to you because I want you to see that they are happy with what they have. They are perfectly content to be poor because they are together, which is something that Scrooge still doesn't understand. And this event is incredibly important for the rest of the scenes. Now, scene 4 is a little bit longer than the rest of the scenes, but it's because this scene in particular plays a very, very important role for the development of the entire plot, so let's pay attention. The Ghost of the Christmas Present takes Scrooge to his final destination for the time being, his nephew's house. He sees his nephew, Fred, having a conversation with his wife. His wife is basically telling him, why do you keep insisting? Scrooge is your uncle, he's never going to change, he doesn't like us, okay, we don't like him. Why do you keep trying to build a relationship? And his nephew says, I kind of feel sorry for him. He is out there alone, and he really doesn't realize that there is family here that will be willing to put all of those differences aside to form a good relationship, which is exactly what the nephew wants. Scrooge feels kind of guilty because, remember, he has made it his point to reject him all the time. Every time that his nephew tries, Scrooge simply closes the door on his face. So he feels like he needs to have a conversation with him and try to fix the relationship. But then Scrooge realizes that he's taken away from that house and the Ghost of the Christmas Present begins to disappear. And it's the Ghost of the Christmas Present. He likes to do it in style. Scrooge notices then 2 kids hanging on to the Ghost of the Christmas Present's robes. And he doesn't know who these kids are. And when he asks, the ghost says, they are ignorance and want. Now, ignorance and want are 2 symbols that are very important to the story because they actually represent something in Scrooge's character. Want pretty much represents everything that Scrooge is. Selfish, covetous, morose, wanting everything for himself. And ignorance represents everything that Scrooge has abandoned in pursuit of his goal of getting as much money as he can. Scrooge feels very scared about these children because he had no idea that they were so aggressive in a way, and he now feels like they are part of him. The Ghost of the Christmas Present disappears, at the stroke of midnight, and then Scrooge finds himself alone in a place that he has no idea about. And this is where we meet the next ghost, the Ghost of the Christmas Future. The Ghost of the Christmas Future is entirely different from the other ghosts. He actually does not talk, and all we see is a black hooded figure. Pretty much like Death, or like those Nazgul spirits from Lord of the Rings. But the Ghost of the Christmas Future just stands there, without saying a word. Scrooge is very scared, but he tries to get him to say anything, and nothing happens. Until the ghost takes him to a new place. He sees 2 people speaking on the street, like, what's the point? And then Scrooge realizes that they're talking about someone that has recently died. The men are very shocked because nobody went to the funeral home, nobody paid their respects, and pretty much now they're just gonna take care of the body and put him in a different place. Now Scrooge feels that they're talking about Marley and asks, why are you taking me to the past? This makes no sense. The ghost says nothing, but I think that you and I know exactly who that dead person is. But then the ghost takes him to a different place, a mansion. And Scrooge sees, to his surprise, a lot of people taking stuff out of the mansion. They take curtains, they take bed sheets, they take clothes, they take chandeliers, everything that they can. And amongst this group of people, Scrooge recognizes his maid, Mrs. Dilber. And she's basically, laughing with the others and saying, well, that miser never enjoyed these things when he was alive, so we might as well enjoy them now and get some good cash for it. Scrooge is pretty upset and he realizes that nobody truly cared about him. Not even enough to respect his things. But then the ghost takes him to a different place, And this is the place that truly changes Scrooge. Instead of finding a merry house full of happy people, he now sees a house full of very sad people that are basically in mourning at this point. And that's when he realizes that he is at Bob Cratchit's house. And his biggest fear has come to pass. Tiny Tim has unfortunately died. And everyone in that house is incredibly depressed, and who wouldn't be, right? Scrooge realizes that this is something that he caused directly, because if Bob had had enough money to pay for treatment, maybe Tiny Tim could have lived a little bit longer. But unfortunately, his physical impairment was too much for him, and he succumbed to death. This is when Scrooge feels very, very guilty, but then darkness surrounds him again, and he finds himself at a cemetery. Scrooge is very, very scared, but then he sees a gravestone, which he really doesn't want to, because he recognizes that this gravestone is his own. And the name is right there. Ebenezer Scrooge died on Christmas Day. Scrooge feels incredibly sad, disappointed, all of the emotions rush in, and he goes on his knees, begging the ghost of the Christmas future for another chance. Please, don't let this happen to me. I'm going to become better. I'm going to share my wealth with everyone. I'm going to make sure to build new relationships. I'm going to change. I'm going to become a much better human being than what I was before. And remember, he was basically trash. So the ghost says nothing, and Scrooge continues to be enveloped by this darkness, and he continues to insist, please, please give me another chance. I'm going to change. I'm going to be better. And unlike most YouTubers who, make fake apologies, he actually means it. And then everything goes dark, and Scrooge has no idea what has just happened. Now, scene 5 opens with Scrooge on his bed, waking up, super scared, having no idea what just happened. And then he realizes he has been given that second chance that he wanted. Now he can become the person that he promised to be. He is incredibly happy, like he's never been before, and there's a whole 180. Scrooge is a different person now. He no longer even has that scowl on his face. He's smiling. He goes around very happily, gets out of the house, sees a little boy just walking on the street and tells him, you know what, little kid, I'm going to give you all this money if you can just go and buy the biggest turkey that you can find. And basically send it to this address, Bob Cratchit's address. And the little kid goes on super happily, having no idea what just happened. But Scrooge, it's hysterical. He goes on the street, he starts singing with everybody, people are surprised because, in the community, he is thought to be a pretty unpleasant human being. But then he is singing Christmas carols, being all happy about it. And he even meets the people that he rejected at the beginning of the story. The portly man, who basically asks him for charity. He meets this person, apologizes, and then asks him to stop by tomorrow to give him a lot of money for the hospice. Now, everybody is shocked and they have no idea what had just happened, but the Scrooge is just beaming with joy. In this scene, we see how not only he talks with people, but also he even goes to his nephew's house, apologizes, and even attends the Christmas dinner. He is now rebuilding relationships. He meets Cratchit the next day, as Cratchit had promised to be there early, but then Scrooge gives him the day off. He tells him, you know what, I'm going to increase your salary. I'm going to make your family's life a lot better because I appreciate you. Cratchit is shocked, but very, very thankful nonetheless. And the last thing that we see in the entire play is basically Scrooge having fun, carrying Tiny Tim on his shoulder and singing Merry Christmas and being all happy ever after, as every other story. If we could learn a message from A Christmas Carol, I would say that the most important thing is to realize that our actions have an impact on others. And this is exactly what Scrooge realizes. His actions have an impact, and you can even change all of that. You don't necessarily have to be young to change. You can be 90 years old, which Scrooge almost is, and still turn your life around. That's the most important part of this story, turning your life around. And if that's what we can rescue from it, why not? Once again, thank you so much for watching, everyone. Thank you for your support. I hope you like this. Again, this interpretation is just something very, very basic. We could argue that there are many other interpretations and there are many other details in the story, but just wanted to go over very, very basic details of it. And I even got a better Christmas hat. See, it has lights on it. I'm totally a mature person, I swear. Well, once again, thank you so much. Remember that if you have any requests or any suggestions to help this channel improve, make sure to leave them down in the comment section. If there's any story that you guys would like me to review and just talk a little bit about, again, leave it in the comment section down below. And don't forget to subscribe. I think it's right here. Yeah, right here. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell for more notifications. I will see you next time, and Merry Christmas! Now in August. Quarantine has us all crazy. Scene 3 opens in a different place. The Scrooge.